Thank you so much for that introduction. Excited to be here. So to my left is Christine Tradella, followed by Neda Mayer and Sri Kalyanamaran. And on our screen, we've got Haim Israel joining us. So I want to start off with Christine. Most people, when they think about the metaverse today, they think about gaming. And Meta has sold some 15 million headsets, VR headsets, and that's really outpaced even the highest numbers sold by Sony PSVR. And in fact, we probably wouldn't even be here talking about the metaverse had it not been for Meta and Mark Zuckerberg's commitment to this space. But it's actually being used quite extensively in enterprise. Can you tell us about that?
Yeah, happy to. Well, I think we've been really surprised at how much the headsets and the VR has been used by enterprises and by companies. And to your point, this is largely a gaming experience that we're starting to see even more consumer applications from health and wellness and social experiences. But the way that companies are using this and the innovation that they're doing is truly mind-blowing. We're seeing it happen across 4 key areas right now. And the first is around building community and having events. So companies that are using it for town halls or Q&As or to host conferences. We're seeing it for companies that are using it for collaboration and having meetings, a virtual meeting space to bring people together where they're maybe in disparate locations. We're seeing it for design and creativity. And this is one of the use cases that I love. I think it's just really interesting. We see 3D modeling and collaboration. There's an auto manufacturer that has actually shaved their auto design by using 3D CAD and collaboration from weeks to actually just days. Yeah. And then, of course, there's training. This is one that is a pretty well-known and widespread use case. I was actually talking to Nita in the green room, and she said that was so 5 years ago. Just the amount of adoption that we've seen in training, everything from soft skill training to hard skill training, where you're not only seeing the efficacy and the efficiency of using VR across all of these use cases in terms of just driving more efficiency, but you're also seeing that it allows for huge cost savings. And sometimes those costs are human lives, right? As you're replicating training instances where you can't put somebody, an individual, in the actual situation, but you're able to simulate that so that they don't have to react based on something that they've seen or read, but by something that they've actually done. But I think what's going to happen, and again, like we're seeing good use case adoption, but we're starting to hear more and more companies that are really putting this technology, this next computing platform, at the core of their business, both in terms of how they interact with their employees and how their employees use the technology, but also how they engage with their consumers. And I think this is really, I know this was talked about in the previous panel of this kind of, this real competitive advantage that companies will have in the future if they adopt this technology early. We saw this with the advent of the internet, and a lot of companies were left behind. So a lot of companies are now forming metaverse teams, strategic teams working with third parties to help them think through what is the strategic implication of how we want to introduce the metaverse to our company more broadly.
It's funny that you say that because the previous panel mentioned that this is being used quite actively for collaboration, but the expectations of younger people to have more immersive experiences, especially as people continue to work from home, is that something that you expect to continue?
Absolutely, absolutely. I mean, it's so interesting to watch kids and young adults use the technology. They're much more adept at it. We were even talking about this, about how her daughter put on a headset and just was immediately able to use it and really engaged with it. So this is the technology of the future. It's very intuitive. It's very immersive. The whole kind of premise behind the metaverse and this type of experience is that it's very, it really feels like you're present with people. It's recreating your physical world in a virtual world that allows you to feel very connected, to see expressions, facial expressions, to hear things spatially so that you get the sense that you're actually in the room and part of the experience. And this is something that's just so intuitive.
That segues perfectly over to Sri's work. He is director of a lab and has done extensive research about the relationships in the metaverse. Can you tell us more about that?
Sure. I'll just take off on what Christine mentioned. So, use the exact words about the next computing platform. And so we've looked at it in terms of how these technologies can have an impact on people, especially the psychological sense of attitudes, cognitions, and behaviors. So how it can improve efficiency and satisfaction in the workplace. In our case studies, experiments, and we've generally found that it happens at three levels. One, in terms of how it can enhance the user. So we've seen that it leads to a greater sense of mental refreshment, so a lesser sense of fatigue. And this is also greater satisfaction as reported by themselves. So it's self-reported, but also supervisor ratings of productivity. So those are some of the metrics. A second metric that we've looked at is a greater sense of collaboration, which you mentioned. But interestingly, what we also find is that there's a greater sense of identification and interdependence, which are some of the hallmarks of being a part of a team. We find that they spend more time in real life as part of using this. So that's something which we found to be very interesting. And a third one is an increased sense of empathy. We've looked at it in terms of how it can help to increase diversity in the workplace. And we've seen that a sense of perspective taking leads to a greater sense of empathy. But this is also reflected in some nice behavioral measures, such as greater attendance at diversity events, donating more time as well as money to causes that they believe in. And we also looked at some physiological measures. So it's very interesting to see that it can also have an impact on facial expression, measures of physiological attention. So we've seen some of these that have been reflected in terms of using some of these technologies and how it can enhance productivity.
It's interesting that you mentioned that people are actually spending more time with each other in real life as a result of the time that they've spent in headsets. Why is that?
So that's a great question. So one part of that is because I think it creates greater empathy. We've typically seen that when they go through this experience, putting yourself in the shoes of the other, as we say, that leads to the realization that these are empathy machines. So there's a greater sense of empathy. But then there are also certain other metrics which also are quite important, some of the other mechanisms. One that we've seen is a greater sense of awe. So awe is something which is a very important metric which we are increasingly starting to study. But the other thing, and this also gets into what Christine was getting at earlier, is that it's better decision making under duress. So we've never been in a position where we can actually create these training experiences where, let's say that it's you're performing the function of gatekeeping for a community. So there's a fire breaking out or an earthquake which is imminent. You not only have to report on that, but you also have to tell the community when to leave. So here, you can never in traditional environments actually do that, but you can create a very good immersive simulation where you have the luxury of making as many mistakes as necessary before you come up with the optimum response. So once you do that, that actually leads to more time spent on this as well.
Like firefighting or something where you'd rather be put under pressure in those sort of scenarios rather than to confront it for the first time in real life. Now, you also mentioned that this is something where it's this sense of empathy and this sense of collaboration. In my studies show, I've written a book called Virtual Natives, that younger generations, again, your future workforce, are accustomed to having these relationships online because so many are, in fact, gamers, that for them, the distinction between reality is, which reality are we referring to? So is it the relationships online are as real as relationships in real life to them. And so again, if we think about the future workforce and how they want to prepare and to engage with each other and other colleagues, that is equally a valid workplace for them to meet. I'm going to get to you, Chaim. I know that you're there. Can you tell us, you do thematic investing, and obviously there's a big gap in between those who believe that the metaverse is really a thing. They hear these big numbers being bandied about, some $14 trillion in value being made. And then on the other hand, you've got lots of people who are saying it's never going to take off. VR has been around since the 1960s, and still, we're still not there yet. So what are your views on the metaverse? Where do we stand? And what numbers would you bet on?
So yes, first of all, thank you and pleasure to be here today. We are big believers. We are big believers in in the metaverse as one of the moonshot technologies, and I want to take it one step further. I don't know. No, I'm not coming from the tech industry. I'm coming from a very different industry, from the financial world, and what eventually is going to be the killer application, or how the headsets, how the architecture is eventually going to fold out. That's probably above me. But when we're looking at technology and we're looking at those moonshot technology, which I have no doubt that the metaverse is part of them. There's a mistake that we keep making. We underestimate technologies. We underestimate how fast they are changing the world, and we keep giving up on them. And as a result, we are at some point we are disappearing. We are not investing in the right things. We are behind technology again and again and again, and we are missing technologies not by a quarter, not by a year or two. We are missing sometimes. We are missing them by decades. And let me give you an example. That is how we are being trained, how we are thinking about technologies like the metaverse. We keep thinking in linear terms. And your question came like, right on spot. No, the metaverse sparked into our life 2 or 3 years ago, and all of us are thinking in linear terms. You know what? It was introduced 2 or 3 years ago. The concept was out there, give or take 3 years ago, and then we have to think about it 2, 3, 4 years, and that's going to become linearly up until we're going to adopt it. That's the mistake. Technology does not move in a linear way. It moves in an exponential way. Because we've been trained to think in linear and everything moves exponentially, we keep missing technologies again and again. The smartphone revolution. I think that in the audience, there's no doubt about the smartphone revolution, how it changed our life. What we keep missing is that two things. First of all, the smartphone revolution only happened, the first iPhone came in 2007. The real revolution happened, give or take, around 10 years ago, when more applications came out, when the App Store came, when the Play Store by Google came, when the Android device came. So it really 10 years ago. That's roughly about it. That's nothing. And at the time, we're thinking, you know what? It's not really taking off. Why should I really care? No, you would be behind. But if you take the smartphone revolution, and all of us were thinking in linear terms, then the technology moves so fast. If you take the average estimate of all the different agencies out there about the penetration of the smartphone market, the current number of mobile phones we have on the planet today, we were expecting them to happen in 100 years. We missed the technology by 100 years. Cloud computing, 82 years. Renewable energy, 75 years. We missed technology again and again by decades. Going back to the metaverse, don't do this mistake again, thinking, you know what, might take off, might not take off. Maybe in a different architecture, maybe in a different ways. Again, that's probably for the technical guys in the panel to say. But if we keep thinking in that term, we are going to completely miss it. No, the number one revolution, yes.
I'm wondering why that is, though, because I feel as though people are really grabbing onto the idea of AI, but the metaverse seems to really elude people. And so is it because it's just kind of complex to understand that, or to imagine a 3D web? What is holding people back, in your opinion?
Excellent comparison. AI is not new. AI, the first recollection of an AI algorithm was back in 1968. It's nothing new. It sparked into our life so fast in December, generative AI, but the concept of AI, the algorithms of AI, the technology behind AI is something that's been with us for 60, 70 years. We just now managed to find out the killer applications around it. And as a result, now it's changing our life. And I have no doubt that AI, that I'm sure we're going to discuss so many times today, and on this panel about the collaboration and the linkage between AI and the metaverse is nothing new. But we've been keep thinking linearly, so we missed it. Now that everybody are very surprised that in the last 3-4 months, the world have changed, completely changed. That's a technology that people were acknowledging and understanding the capabilities for decades now. But the reason is because we've been trained to think in a linear way, while technology is always jumping exponentially. And you always say, Christina talk about the development in the handsets, in technology, in the applications, and the other panelists as well. And the market keeps missing that and thinking, oh, you know what? If it's not in my living room right now, it probably does not exist. It does exist, exists very fast.
I think that really summarizes it very succinctly because it's about the great acceleration and convergence,
Yes.
and it's all happening very, very quickly. Ned, I want to turn to you because you're with Sodexo, which is a food company, and online, if you go into many metaverse spaces, there are thousands of, if not millions, of rooms that are dedicated to fast food restaurants. And I have captured some of these myself in video, visiting some of these brands that exist in the metaverse that were created by fans. So there are thousands of Taco Bells and Subways and McDonald's, and they're very popular spaces for people to meet in, and they're great fun because that's a B2C experience. But food, from a B2B experience, especially from catering, which is an experience, and then adding the extra layer of the fact that this is food, which means it's got smell and taste, which are things that you don't experience in a headset. So how are you approaching the metaverse?
So it's a great question because we are looking for a long time of how people are going to work in the future. My girl, which we discussed before, her dream is to be uploaded to the cloud and get rid of her body and just live without her needs. And until we get that there, people still need to eat, right? Lunch. So we still have work, but with the new collaboration between Meta and Microsoft, for an example, we do see people going towards working in the metaverse. And our question is, while they are working, let's say 8-9 hours a day with the VR mask.
Is that what you envision?
We do.
Christine?
Absolutely.
So we're going to be living in headsets?
I think the headset will evolve. It'll be something that's much more long-term wearable than
Yeah, so
the headsets of
we
today,
see
but
global
absolutely.
companies, they are working today in teams 8-9 hours a day. So once Teams is going to move into VR spaces, people are going to spend hours with their headsets. And then if we want to give them a food experience and they're sitting with their headsets, how are we going to do that? So this is a question that we are working on. And we can leverage all the features or future features in the VR set to give them an enhanced food experience.
I can imagine that you can do things like give people a sense of the type of catering at scale or health and safety training, or there are lots of different ways that don't necessarily have to be consumer or even client related. It can be internal training as well.
True. So we are working as a company on different use cases of how we can leverage the metaverse to our services. We talked before on the digital twin, for an example. Sodexo is managing food on many great places like the Eiffel Tower. So imagine if we can bring the experience to our clients of having food on the Eiffel Tower or having even conference in the metaverse on the Eiffel Tower. So really there is no limits.
Fantastic. Well, you have a few minutes left. I want to throw out one question, which is pretty much on the top of everyone's mind, and that is AI. How are you incorporating AI into your strategies? I'll leave that to everybody.
So maybe I can start. Because we are working on different use cases with generative AI, but these are more concrete for today because we want really to bring the value to our business using this technology. So just to give you one use case, which is really linked to all the CSR commitment that was discussed here before, how we can leverage all the food that was left in our fridges. So imagine a huge site with thousands of employees. and we have a lot of food leftovers in the fridge, how we can use generative AI to create recipes based on the food that was left in the fridges.
Ah, that's a great way. So you're opening up the experience to a broader customer base because it's no longer B2B, it's now B2C, which makes Sodexo a more household name.
Yeah, and this is only one use case out of lots that we are working on.
Anybody else want to talk about AI?
Sure,
Yeah,
I'm happy. Oh.
Hi.
please go ahead. Go ahead, Christine.
Well, I was just going to say, so to your point, actually, this is something, AI is something that has been worked on for decades, and certainly something that Metaverse has been investing in and leveraging across our family of apps and now our Reality Labs products. We think about it in two pieces. There's the recommendation AI, which again applies to all of our family of apps that allows us to make recommendations about what you see in your news feeds on Instagram and Facebook. It allows us to make sure that we're showing the right ads to the right people. And it also helps with content moderation. It's something that allows us to quickly pull down bad actors or bad content as it's showing up across these family of apps. And then with generative AI, we're creating a lot of tools that not only allow our marketers or advertisers on our family of app platforms to create better ads, but also it's the fundamental operating system for all of the hardware that we're producing. Quest 2 in 2019 was the first headset to leverage an AI operating system. And you can think about all the great kind of things that we can bring to creators and developers by leveraging AI in the metaverse, being able to create avatars, being able to create and code and be able to create worlds and everything. So that's something that we're leveraging on the Reality Labs side.
Imagine how you can create your own avatar and have generative AI based on what you know, and then it can work for you.
Yeah, we've actually created one for Adidas. We're one of the largest digital media agencies in the world. And we created one with Adidas that responded to a personality test, and it would automatically configure an avatar. Did you get one? And we had about 500,000 of those which were created within the first week. It was actually really super exciting. What about you? How are you using AI with your research?
We've already seen some examples with NVIDIA made this great product, and then Build a Bot looks at auto-generating, this. But one other point that I'll mention here is it leads for more embodied experiences with greater hapticity. So that leads to more hyper-realistic perspective taking. Mm-hmm. So today when we talk about facial expression tracking, body tracking, and then lower body tracking, now that's not something that's possible with off-the-shelf headsets like the Quest, but that's soon going to be something which is going to be greatly realized. And one other point that I'll add here to what's already been said is it's also got great implications. We spoke a little bit about personalization, but it's also got these great implications for safety, security, privacy, and moderation. Mm-hmm. So one, in terms of how it can filter some of these comments. We've seen some examples of that even outside the metaverse with what happened at the French Open recently when the players had that AI-generated system which protected them. But that's going to be something which is going to be huge in the metaverse. And I was just recently speaking to a group that works with autism. So you can imagine how you could have such a personalized AI system which would make sure that you control the light and the sound based on individual tailored tastes. So that's going to be, again, something which is going to be huge.
That's really interesting. It's interesting that you've also talked about some of the consumer experiences, and I know that we've worked on one with The Weeknd for Spotify, in which he knew everybody's name, and he knew how many times they'd listened to certain songs, and he could effectively engage with the people who logged on to experience it, and Twitter went insane. People, the real fans, really, it's parasocial relationships. People really want to have that proximity to celebrities and to people that they follow. And so to be able to create that at scale is really, really powerful. We have a few minutes left, and I'd like to know a little bit of the inside scoop about next year's wearables. And since, Christine, I have you here, I can't help but ask about the augmented reality glasses that Meta has been working on. Can we expect to see anything like that coming up next year?
Yeah, well, this year you're going to see a new headset from us. It's the Quest 3 headset, and it's really a breakthrough in mixed reality. It's going to allow for pass-through technology that is actually 8 times better than the pass-through that you're going to see out on the demos with the Quest Pro, which I hope everybody gets an opportunity to demo our headsets out there. But it's really great. It's going to be more powerful, it's thinner, it's sleeker, it's lighter, and it's just really going to be a very accessible device. The price point that we've put out at $499 means that it's going to be a very high-quality product that is accessible to the masses, so we're very excited for that. We continue to innovate on our line of glasses. We have a partnership with Ray-Ban, with Luxottica, that creates the Ray-Ban glasses. Right now, it's very much a capture and share mechanism.
They're awesome.
Sorry?
Yeah, they're like spy glasses. Just press a button.
They're really cool. They're voice activated too. You can say take a picture or take a video and it will start recording. Of course, there's an LED light to let other people know. We don't want to surprise people that there's an action being taken or that they're being recorded. But you'll continue to see innovation from us on that. I mean, we believe that AR has the potential to be much greater than VR ultimately, where you're really fusing your physical and digital worlds together in something that's very comfortable and easy to wear. So yeah, more to come.
I think it's really fantastic because when you're wearing them, and I love telling people I'm calling for my glasses, but it's really fun to be able to, and I can imagine that at some point it'll be able to give you directions in real time. Absolutely. So that when you're looking through the glasses, it's going to take a left here rather than kind of doing this and trying to figure out actually where am I, where did I start from, which is hugely frustrating until you've walked in the wrong direction for a few minutes. Which brings me to about how do you feel about Apple's Vision Pro? You only have a minute left, so you can weasel out.
You give me a zinger at the end. I feel great. I mean, it really validates the space. I mean, I think again, there's just been such resounding feedback and discussions that we've been having around companies really believing that this is the next computing platform, and it's starting to really feel real. Again, not just with the use case adoption, but with a broader sense of, how do I integrate this into every part of my business with my employees and consumers? So I think it's great. It just validates the space, and we're really excited. Yeah.
Well, I think I couldn't agree more because obviously Mark Zuckerberg has been such a champion of the space, and he really put the entire reputation of the company out there by saying we are now a metaverse company, and so it's great to see other massive companies do this in a very public way, because we're seeing companies like NVIDIA, et cetera, do it behind the scenes, but it's great to see this really take off in the public imagination. Well, that's pretty much all the time we have left. I'd like to thank all of our panelists for this fantastic conversation, really interesting, and thank you all for watching. Appreciate it.